Thank you and good afternoon. As you can see that none of the panelists have followed the instructions behind, but I hope you can make out who is who and don't go by what's the name on the board. So India is in high conversation these days, primarily because in the space sector, primarily because of the success of Chandrayaan-3 and Aditya L1. But there's another side that is evolving in India beyond the scientific research and advancements that India is doing, which is the commercial aspect of space and how India is transitioning to private sector in the space industry. We talked a little bit about the reforms last year at the GNF session. I don't know if any of you were there at that time. And we'll talk more about it because a lot has happened since then. We have with us a very knowledgeable panel. Let me introduce Valery Akasmenotov, Director of International Progress at Boeing. He has experience previously in Russia and with NASA. Enrico Palermo, Head of Australian Space Agency, and he has many years of experience with Virgin Galactic before he joined his current role. In the end is Marcel Smith, Vice President of Experimental and acting CTO for Voyager Space, and he also has a lot of experience with NASA. These three gentlemen, in addition to being experts in space, also know India very well and the Indian space program, and I would say are friends of India. And then we have Victor Joseph, my colleague from ISRO. He is Associate Scientific Secretary and Director of Technology Development and Innovation. What I will do is very quickly take you through what's happening in India. And after that, I'm going to request each of the panelists to talk for a few minutes, and then we'll get into Q&A. And as you know, there is a barcode, it's not on the screen here right now, which you could access to ask questions if you have any questions. And I will then ask the questions of the panelists. So let me start off by, so one of the biggest things that has happened in the Indian space sector in the last 12 months is the launch of Indian Space Policy 2023. Many of you will be familiar with it. I'll talk a little bit more about that and how India is aspiring to emerge as a global space hub in specific areas. And again, we'll talk about that. Many of you would have seen this photograph on the left where our journey started way back in 1963, 60 years ago, on a bicycle, and where we have landed now in 2023 with Chandrayaan-3, the moon lander. And India has made a lot of advances during this time thanks to ISRO and has become a leading player in space technology, and many of you would acknowledge that to be the case. Now, what has happened in the last 3 years is a transition that's happening in India, where we are moving from ISRO being the sole player in the space sector in India to private sector coming in and playing a more meaningful role than it has played in the past. A few of the things that have happened, and again, many of you will be familiar with this, is establishment of NSIL, which is a public government-owned company, was established in March 2019, and this company provides all the space services. Operationalizing in space, which I am the chairperson for, in September 2021, and I'll talk more about that. And release of Indian Space Policy in 2023, and I'll talk more about that. What is in the works right now is the revision in the foreign direct investment policy for space sector, which is just about getting ready. So what the Indian Space Policy did was took everything to do with space, satellite communication, remote sensing, space exploration, transportation, navigation, everything, and put it into one comprehensive document, only 12 pages long. That means in 12 pages, we have completely defined the Indian space policy. And there are 4 key players in making this policy happen. ISRO, of course, is the granddaddy. in space, NSIL, and then NGE, which stands for non-government entities, that is the private sector. Now, what the policy has achieved is removed almost all restrictions for the private sector to participate in the space sector in India, which till that point was almost inaccessible for the private sector. Private sector can now build rockets and satellites, can launch, own, and operate space assets, can deliver commercial services, can co-own technology with ISRO or their own technology, can have EO data acquisition and dissemination, can create infrastructure in ISRO premises or on their own, and also it talks about transferring ISRO technology to private sector. So you can see that almost everything that the private sector would want to do in space is now permitted, of course with some sort of fine print, permitted in the new policy. And what we are doing right now, which is again awaited for many people in this audience, is revising the FDI policy, that is foreign direct investment policy for space, which again was very restrictive till now, and we are opening it up significantly to allow significantly large investments to come into India, either on their own or as joint venture or as investment into Indian companies. So there's a lot of confusion often between what is the role of ISRO in space and NSIL. All three are government organizations. All three come under Department of Space, but have very distinct role for each of them. ISRO, as the National Space Agency of India, would now focus more on designing, development, and testing of space systems, more on research and development in space exploration, more on academic and industry outreach for space R&D, more on infrastructure development, on scientific missions, and human space flights, and leave the day-to-day sort of space activity to private sector or to NSIL. NSIL, as a government-owned company, will be the market for space-based services and will also service the space-based needs of the users using, very often, ISRO facilities. In space, which is an independent autonomous body, is set up to regulate and authorize all space activities in India, promote and enable industry, while we are regulating the industry, also promoting and enabling the industry, act as a single window agency so that you can sort of navigate through multiple government departments to get approval for anything that you're looking to do in a space sector, international outreach for private sector, not for agency to agency, nurture startups, facilitate access to ISRO facilities and technologies, and create common use infrastructure so that private sector, specifically the small companies who cannot afford to set up expensive infrastructure, can come and use this infrastructure on a pay-per-use basis. And also facilitate access to funding by giving confidence to the investors on the future potential in the space sector. Now, there is an effort right now to create a decadal vision and strategy for Indian space economy. We are not talking scientific side, and in fact, we'll be releasing this vision document on Tuesday, Tuesday, 10th of October, to talk about where India sees itself 10 years from now in terms of space economy, and what are the areas that we'll be putting our focus on, and how do we see that we will get there. Currently, Indian space economy is measured at about $8 billion, which is only about 2% of global space economy. And of course, India has aspirations to take that number multiple fold. And what that multiple fold is, we will talk about on 9th of October, or 10th of October. Now, there are few things that we think India can have a competitive advantage in, can get into and do well. The first one in manufacturing. We feel that India can become a small satellite manufacturing hub, can perhaps get into space-grade components that India does not do much of today, become manufacturer of antennas and user terminals. In the launch services, while we have the PSLV rocket and the LVM-3 rocket, which is well known to most of you, India probably can become pretty big in small launch vehicles. And the reason I say that is that ISRO has just completed launch of or development of SSLV, and there are at least 3 private sector companies that are working on launch vehicles of 500 kilogram to 800 kilogram, and with its cost-effective opportunity, and with creation of a new launch center that ISRO will be financing, we can become a small launch center hub for the world. And of course, in LEO constellation launching, that can become very, very handy. On ground services, I have talked to some of the companies here today. India can provide ground distance services. In satellite broadband, India right now is non-existent. That's an area of opportunity. And EO data dissemination, where currently all the data is with ISRO, but soon we will have private sector also generating this data. India can start doing that. And the most important one, perhaps in applications, with India's strength in IT, we probably can get into data products, API, in a big way, in agri, marine, forest, urban planning, and many more things. And this we see as the big opportunity. So what is the advantage that India has in summarizing? Of course, we have the new policy. The Indian states are coming up with their own policy, adding to incentives for doing space activity in their own states. We have a strong technology partner and vendor ecosystem. There are at least 400 vendors who supply to ISRO today, and have been doing that for several decades. Growing manufacturing base, large domestic market, which is evolving, world-class software capabilities, as you all know, high number of STEM graduates, and low labor cost. There are some of the companies that are there in India today. On the first column, these are startups. They're rapidly becoming household names in India, and they have done a good job, many of them, in raising fund from the investors. In the middle are the large and mid-sized companies, which have been vendors to ISRO for many years, and now getting on the higher end of technology development within India. And on the right side are the PSUs, the government-owned companies. NCL is directly in space, of course, and the other companies that supply to ISRO and are doing technology development for space. And there are many, almost all large international space companies that have a presence in India or want to be present in India. Many of them have been there for a long time, and some of them have been looking at India only recently. So, just to make the whole greater than sum of parts, we believe that global partnerships are going to be extremely important for us in technology, in terms of joint development, missions, in infrastructure for space, ground asset sharing, private industry and trade bodies, the partnership between them, and trade policy and agreements, of course, will play a big role. Investment and funding will be required, and it's just beginning to happen. It's still ramping up. And then, of course, sustainable space operations. So with that, I would wrap up my sort of introductory presentation and request first Valerie to come and talk about how he sees India's opportunity and how Boeing will play a role in that. Thank you. Your slide, so you might.
Hello, everyone. I want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak at your panel and discuss a vision for the changes in Indian space policy and how it will affect the Boeing company. I'd like to show you a few slides. The Boeing actually well known for the aviation and the defense, and I realized through my different presentation and with different audience that they know some, but they don't know how many different platforms Boeing has in space portfolio. And I want to show you the platforms which Boeing operates right now, and it's useful for the development of joint opportunities for the exploration and use on Earth. Okay, the Boeing space, as of right now, we have several divisions and several platforms. Well known to everybody is International Space Station. Boeing is a prime contractor for the International Space Station as well as sustaining of the operations of the ISS. Over the years, the station was built utilizing the shuttle, which was also operated by Boeing. It was delivery means for the big elements on orbit and assembly. We also in the process of preparation for the first crew flight of the Starliner, our capsule to deliver the crew to International Space Station. And this capsule have a lot of capabilities and unique abilities. For example, this capsule is only one who can land at this moment on the US side to the ground due to the sophisticated parachute system and airbag system, which gives a very low impact during the touchdown. It's the capsule designed for the 7 seats. NASA is going to utilize 4 seats and it will be cargo. But Boeing also estimates opportunities maybe to put additional seats, which can be used by different countries for different purposes. But it's up to NASA to approve this plan and how we're going to work with it. Boeing also the developer and prime contractor for the core stage of Space Launch System, which takes Orion crew vehicle for the Artemis program to the moon and around the moon. It's the biggest rocket right now built, and we had successful launches, which you saw in the recent past. And we're hoping that it will take us and take everybody to the moon orbit, and potentially open the gate to go further. Also, Boeing developed and utilizing the small shuttle, which is called X-37, which is going to space automatically, and it's automated system. It can stay in space for a long time, and then do the experiments several years and come back to bring the results. In the other division, which we have in Boeing, it's satellites, which is government and commercial satellites, large satellite system. We're working on different constellations. Empower satellites right now, which is totally electric propulsion system operated, and we're developing the constellation right now for the SAS, which will provide the best broadband communication and a lot of capacity with high speed. Not many people maybe know that Boeing also in their portfolio has a Spectralab, which is a company producing solar cells, one of the highest efficiency solar cells. The Spectralab cells is used on ISS, original cells, and recently the improved and updated technology was used to expand and update the solar cells on orbit for the fraction of the surfaces required to give full power back to ISS to support the research and extend the life. Right now, we're talking about 2020 and 2030, and we hope that we will see the future opportunities with it. And recently, the Boeing got involved in the medium to small satellite business, which is Millennium Space Systems. So we have 2 different types of satellites, large and medium to small. And of course, we have a launch system in alliance with the United Launch Alliance. Currently, for example, the Starliner will be using the Atlas rocket from United Launch Alliance for launch, and in the process of development is a Vulcan rocket, which will replace it. Okay, so these systems are used for the providing the support of NASA vision of space exploration, low Earth orbit to the moon and to the Mars. You can see itself where these platforms can be used. I don't want to spend much time on that because everybody is familiar with this picture. I just want to give one more perspective. It's Boeing India. Boeing was involved with India in aviation 75 years plus when we delivered the first airplane, DC-3S, which was McDonnell Douglas, but Boeing acquired in the process of acquisitions of mergers. Now it's kind of Boeing heritage. And since that, we had a lot of development in India. Currently, Boeing has around 5,000 employees in aviation. We have a program that I want to mention. We have also joint venture with Tata on production of India. And we have design and development center, which has 2,500 engineers, which is used by Boeing, and a lot of manufacturing companies in India integrated within Boeing as a supply chain and with the highest quality, and we're utilizing the talent from India. So this gives us a kind of model how we can use, which we can use for space. Now as the policy are changed, and we are looking at opportunities and trying to commonly beneficial from both sides projects, and we can work with, and looking at utilizing manufacturing, design and development, and utilization within this space program. So I just want to finish that because I don't want to, I took already too much time for everybody to speak. Thank you.
May I now request Enrico?
Thank you, Chairman InSpace, for inviting me to be part of this esteemed panel. Colleagues, good afternoon. I hope you've all had a fantastic week, and certainly give my thanks to our host, Cosmos and IAF for a fantastic IAC. I do want to start by congratulating Israel and the Indian government on the Chandrayaan-3 landing. We have a very large Indian diaspora in Australia, and the attention that it captured in Australia was remarkable, and certainly gave our team at the Australian Space Agency goosebumps as we one day will have our rover doing operations on the moon, so congratulations. When the Australian Space Agency was formed, one of the key reasons for forming the agency was to give Australia a front door to the world for international space collaboration. And in many respects, the strong relationships we're forging with our Indian partners are an embodiment of that vision. If you're not aware, Australia and India are comprehensive strategic partners. And earlier this year, our Honourable Prime Minister Albanese visited the Honourable Prime Minister Modi ji, and in their bilateral statement really highlighted civil space cooperation as a key part of the bilateral relationship. And we're now turning that vision into reality through several programs, our support to the Gaganyaan human spaceflight program, and our collaborative projects stream, which I'm happy to go into detail. The chairman outlined a reform agenda in India that started around 2020, and I really want to commend and applaud the Indian government on the space policy they released this year, which the chairman outlined. If you haven't read it, I encourage you to do it. For me, this is an excellent piece of public policy that is going to fuel progress in India's space sector. It's very articulate, it's very direct. It says where government's going to intervene, what is the role of government, but it also identifies compelling opportunities for the private sector in India. As I think about our relationship, I see a lot of parallels between the journeys India is on and Australia is on. So we both have long and proud histories in the space sector. Obviously, incredible world-leading capabilities in India, but Australia's been in the space age since the beginning. We were one of the first nations to launch a satellite into space from our territory. We have supported all the nations of the world in deep space communications through our colleagues at the CSIRO. We've used remote sensing or Earth observation in our primary sectors and to deal with some of our greatest challenges. And we've, like every nation on Earth, rely on space technologies every day. And around 2016, 2017, probably similar to the period around 2020, we realised there was an incredible opportunity for Australia to build on this heritage. We need space capabilities, resilient space capabilities for our citizens. Developing a private space sector is an engine for economic growth. And we didn't want to miss out on the new wave of innovation in space. And so we realised by setting the conditions for growth through establishing an agency to be better coordinated, to have that front door, to have empowering legislation, to set vision and aspiration is what we needed. And so the agency was formed on the 1st of July 2018, and we recently celebrated our 5th birthday. And the contrast pre and post agency in Australia over those 5 years has been dramatic, and I think over the next 5 years we're going to see as a dramatic change in India. From Australian perspective, we've seen a rapid proliferation of small and medium enterprises, startups. Some of those are really now starting to scale and get later series funding. We've created thousands of jobs, and part of that's been through over 50 projects the Australian Space Agency has invested in. We're seeing more Australian hardware on orbit. Roughly 2/3 of Australian manufactured mass put into orbit's gone up in the last year, so we're having that inflection point in developing our space heritage. We've established strong partnerships like India, but with NASA on Artemis Accords in the world and our lunar rover, through to Catherine Burnell-Pegg, who's now training alongside European astronaut candidates in Cologne, and our support to JAXA on Hayabusa 2 and MMX, just as a few examples. We've activated our Commercial Launch Act. We're one of the few nations in the world that has now flown rockets to space under our Commercial Space Launch Act, and we're open for business, both for domestic and international partners, and various other things, a lot of workforce and inspirational development. And one that's really is an example of something Australia can bring that's different is we had this vision that we could translate our experience in remote operations, in resources, into space operations. And we've now seen that with one centre, for example, in Perth, that there was a co-investment by the Australian government that has operations from the deep space to the deep sea, or the other way around. So it's a fascinating time for Australia. Our collaboration with India, I think, is going to boost and continue this momentum, and so we're really appreciative of the open invitation we've had to collaborate with India. And shamelessly, I'll say you all need to come and see that progress in 2025 in Sydney. I'll leave brochures at the front, but thank you.
So if you can keep your comments to 3-4 minutes each.
Hey, thank you very much for having us here. Thank you very much for having us here. I was going to say the same thing. We're running out of time, and I would definitely want to get to the questions. So I'll go real quick. I'm Marshall Smith from Voyager Space, and Voyager Space is kind of new on the scene. We've been around since 2019. Since that time, we've grown. We've acquired over 7 companies, and with more on the way. We have we're a medium-sized company, but we've done some pretty big things. For example, one of the biggest things that most people know about us is the Starlab space station, which is one of the stations that is in orbit to become the next commercial space station, replacing the International Space Station. So we've got quite a lot going on in those areas, but a lot of our companies do a lot of things that really collaborate well with what India is doing. We do propulsion systems, we build payloads, we launch payloads to low Earth orbit and beyond. We definitely deal with other types of industries as we move forward in ISS. For example, we support a lot of life support systems, things like that, as we move forward. And, just to keep this short, when I think about India, I've been there several times now, at least 2, one more coming up soon. We just signed a memorandum of agreement, understanding, if you will, with India, and we really are looking to expand our capability in India, in part because of the science policy, because of space policy that's put in place, really enabling commercial partnerships, global engagement. There's a lot of capability in India, a lot of engineering capability in India that we want to take advantage of as we move into the future. So we're really excited about that.
Thank you. Victor?
Okay, thank you, Chairman, for inviting me to this distinguished panel. And thanks to all the global partners for the successful Chandrayaan-3 mission. Thank you. And as the Chairman said, in space policy, what has happened, it has demarcated the role of ISRO, NCL in space, and Department of Space, and private sectors. So what ISRO will be focusing is what it has been mandated to do, the R&D and the cutting-edge technologies with respect to space transportation, space infrastructure, human space flight, capacity building, and more specifically, if we'll go more focused on the human space flight, the space exploration, the national missions, and scientific missions. So to name a few, already the Aditya L1 is on course to L1. It has left the sphere of influence, and it is going towards L1, and it will be reaching there by around January. The Gaganyaan program is also going full swing, and by 2025, we expect to have the first human into space. And we are also in the process of bringing out a new technology vision roadmap, connecting some of the space transportation, space exploration, Chandrayaan-3, as well as the human space flight missions. And many scientific missions are also on the anvil with the collaboration with international partners. For example, we can see NISR, NASA ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar, which is planned by next beginning. Trishna is another mission which we have planned in collaboration with the EOS. We have LUPEX mission coming with collaboration with the JAXA for lunar polar exploration. We have more than 61 countries participating through around 275 MOUs. So as already said, we'll have focus on cutting-edge technologies for space transportation, reusable launch vehicle, air-breathing propulsion, quantum communication satellites, software-defined radios, space robotics, docking, and orbit refueling, which is required for space exploration. And on the other side, we'll be always supporting the NGEs with our best practices, facility, resource sharing, knowledge sharing, and all what we can do for the increasing the Indian share in the global space economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Victor. Thank you, all the panelists. We have about 13 minutes left, so I'm going to ask one question of each of you, and then after that I'll go to the audience question, and we have about a dozen questions that have come in. So let me start with you, Enrico. Amongst the agency heads, not counting Indian agency head, you have probably interacted with Indian public sector or private sector, the private sector, the startups, more than anybody else. What do you see as you talk to the companies, their strengths and where they have some gaps?
Yeah, thank you. I've had the pleasure to go to India twice in the last year and engage with a lot in the sector. I'd say strengths, number one, is the energy and the vibrancy of the staff in these startups in India. It's just a real wave of innovation. I think it's a big strength. Another big strength is the policy we talked about. The opportunity for these companies to leverage long-standing ISRO technologies just gives them such a step up competitively internationally. When we were the major partner in the BSX Bengaluru Space Expo in September, and we saw 7 Australian entities sign MOUs with Indian space companies. So I think another strength is they're looking to and actively are partnering internationally. So I think they're all strengths. In terms of gaps, I don't see many. I can't really think of one that comes to mind, but they're new companies that have challenges all startups have, so they're going to be looking for funding and moving quickly, but it's an incredible time.
Thank you. So Valerie, if I could ask you, Boeing has a very big presence in India, as you showed in your slide, with more than 5,000 employees, very strong presence in aerospace, of course, and strong presence in defense. As companies like Boeing, I'm not talking specific about Boeing, but companies like Boeing look at India in the space sector, what specifically do you think will be of interest to these companies, and what role they could play in India?
Thank you. It's a very broad question. What can we do? One thing I can tell you, visiting India and Indian ISRO as well as different production facilities in India, I was able to see high technology available for use and talent which I met in India. As I mentioned, we have Boeing Design and Technology Center developed in India. We build it using the local engineers. All the people working there, it's a local graduated from Indian institutes and colleges and universities people, and very talented. And Boeing utilizing them heavily on aviation, but we started already working with them on ISS. For example, we start using them to support ISS sustaining. We're working looking right now in the potential cooperation in the human spaceflight with India. We're thinking about sharing and exchanging technologies in this area. We're also looking at the opportunities to utilize the platform which I described, and it's a very broad. We need to find mutually beneficial points, and it's not just up to Boeing. Boeing is willing to go. We offer ISRO many projects, and we're just trying to be sure that both agencies, ISRO as well as other companies who Boeing work with, will come to the resolution. We're right now in the stage of developing the business cases.
I was going to ask you the same question, Mark, but I'm going to ask you a different question. Sorry. So Marcel, as I go around the show here and many other shows, I sometimes get the feeling that supply is going to outstrip the demand. There are too many companies working on similar things, and I don't know if demand will develop to the same level. I may be wrong, I hope I'm wrong, but that's the feeling that I get. So if that's the scenario, a country like India that's kind of coming out in a global arena on the commercial side just recently, how does the country like India establish its mark?
Great question. I don't ascribe to the supply outstripping the demand, but in that case, it is competitive. And I think what you guys are doing are the right steps. You've put some good policies in effect. I think the things that you need to concentrate on is keeping the regulations down to what's necessary. I go back in my history. There's loads and loads and loads of regulations. You're going to do human spaceflight, those types of things. There's lots of regulations out there. Sometimes we look at them and we don't even know where they came from. And it turns out it was put in place because somebody did something wrong someday, and we put a regulation in place. And they just keep building up. So be careful about when you address these things. How do you keep regulations and policies in check so that enables commercial businesses to be innovative, allows them to get things done when there are problems, address the problem and not create a generic rule, because that will weigh you down. And again, commercial industry and getting things done is about speed. And one of the things we really like about working with you is how fast your team is and how fast they can process things, how fast they can manufacture things. Those are all the kinds of things that will keep India moving forward in the right direction.
Thank you. And Victor, after the success of Chandrayaan-3 and Aditya L1, the question that everybody wants to get answer to is what next? Now, to the extent that you can talk about it, can you share with the audience what will happen next?
As I said, one of the immediate priorities is Gaganyaan. That is the most important priority. So we are starting immediately by October end our test flights for about demonstrations to ensure crew safety. There will be a series of test flights this year and next year, and by 2025 we plan to have the first human space flight. And as I said, there are a series of scientific missions for exploration, like polarimeter, X-ray polarimeter satellite. We have collaborative missions with NASA for NISR. Then the follow-on Chandrayaan missions also will be there. We are proposing that. And we are trying to propose a new launch vehicle, a heavy lift launch vehicle, a reusable launch vehicle for space exploration. So we are trying to connect the Gaganyaan program, the follow-on Chandrayaan missions, and the development of new launchers and see for further exploration. These are in the proposal stage, and we'll be going for further approvals in the due course.
Thank you. So now I go to the question from audience. And the question that with the highest number of votes is, who should I address it to? Victor, you will have to answer this question. How India is planning to compete with SpaceX on the launch service market?
No, we are not competing with SpaceX, but as we know, India is one of the cheapest launch service provider even now, because we are getting a lot of customers, launch service customers as New Space India. Recently, we had 2 OneWeb launches launching 72 satellites using our heavy lift launch vehicle. And then further on, as we said, we are already in the process of bringing out a proposal for a new, much more cost-effective launch vehicle, a reusable launch vehicle, so that we can reduce the cost per launch by a large fraction. So the one thing is about the increasing the payload for space explorations and also for commercial opportunities.
Thank you. The next question, I guess I will have to answer. Is India giving all the LEO telecom operators equal opportunities to provide services in India, or there are some preferences for OneWeb or another operator? Since InSpace has the responsibility for authorizing the operators, what I can say is that as of now, no authorization has been issued. And all the authorization will be done strictly on the merit of the proposal and not on any other basis. So there is no specific preference that will be given to one operator over other based on any criteria other than the merit of the proposal. Okay. Next question is, who can answer this? What are the best ways for foreign private companies to partner with the Indian Space Organization? I suppose I will have to answer that. The best way perhaps is for such companies to either find potential partners through their own interactions that happen in events like this today, or can approach in space with what is your requirement and how we can connect you to the right people. There is no restriction in India as per the new policy for a 100% owned foreign entity to be established in India. You don't necessarily have to have an Indian partner to do space business in India, or you can have an Indian partner if you prefer, or you can license technology if you prefer. So all options are open. And we welcome all companies who do want to do business in India to come to India. What is the economic model envisioned by the Indian government to promote growth of the private sector, especially on the front of capital investment? This is anonymous, so somebody must want to know how in-space will help in getting investment. Well, I believe that Indian government is going to provide some seed funding, as you would know, those who are in India, which we have started doing. But primary investment will have to come from private investors. Government of India will not be investing in companies, but we will try and facilitate investment. And I think that already that process started, and more investors are in fact asking us questions on which are the good companies to invest in. State policies, as mentioned, should we be looking at investments by state in space infrastructure? Yes, I think so, because states have their own incentive package beyond what the federal government does. And as you establish any kind of presence in India, you need to examine which state offers you the most favorable opportunity in terms of the infrastructure that they're providing, in terms of fiscal incentive they're giving, in terms of skill that's available. So it will be prudent to look at a state and see which state is the right state for you to invest in. I'm the moderator, I'm not supposed to be answering all the questions. Okay, I can ask this one to Victor. Does India have any plans to develop horizontal launch capabilities or facilities? Horizontal launch capabilities or facilities?
No, right now we don't have any plan to develop horizontal launch capability, but we have plans, or we are in the process of developing reusable launch vehicles which land horizontally, vertical takeoff and then land horizontally, wing body type of landing. And we have also plans to develop launch vehicles which have vertical takeoff and vertical landing, that is called VTVLs. So both these kind of technologies we are pursuing.
This is a very tricky question, and I could just avoid it, but I will take it on. Can InSpace license a commercial launch without ISRO approval or consultation? By policy, InSpace is authorized to license any launch without ISRO consultation or approval. However, in practice, all the expertise right now is with ISRO. It will be prudent of InSpace to consult with ISRO to ensure that the launch that is being proposed meets all the technical safety, security criteria, and therefore, up to now at least, InSpace is always consulting with ISRO, but does not require ISRO's approval to approve a launch. Well, I don't know how to ask questions to the three invitee panelists here. Maybe one of you can try this. Launch collaboration was mentioned as an option. Is the regulatory environment geared towards new joint ventures and technologies such as horizontal launch? I guess the answer will be yes. Regulation does not prevent it. Any one of you have any angle to it?
I didn't understand the question fully. One of the things, like InSpace, the Australian Space Agency authorises launch activities in Australia, and one of the things we're starting to work with our international partners is which will enable better collaboration is how do our respective regulatory environments maybe permit recognition as we see in other markets like aviation. So I think things like that are going to be important for collaboration into the future.
Okay, so questions are up, time is up, so I would stop here. I'll thank the panel for their participation, and the three non-Indian panelists request you to continue your engagement with India as you have been doing so far. and we look forward to working more and more with you and many other in the audience who are looking at India right now to see whether you should make any significant investment in India in the space sector or provide services or access the market. Thank you, Victor, for participating as the three. And thank you, the audience, for asking some very interesting and difficult questions. Unfortunately, most of them were geared towards me. They should have been more towards the panelists. Thank you very much.